CirdecSongs and Make Weird Music is happy to welcome live from Providence, Rhode Island, Berklee, vocalist, multi-instrumentalist, and all-around nice person, Courtney Swain. How are we doing?
Hello, very well. Thanks for having me, Cedric.
No problem at all. People love those intros and what have you because you are a nice person, and I like.
Thank you. It's very sweet. It made me like just kind of chipper up a little bit.
It's a beautiful thing. How are things going out there in the Northeast?
Pretty good. We have some sun today, even though it's really cold. So as long as there's sun, I'm happy. So it's a good day.
Yeah. That's always a plus. And COVID is just, are we really coming into towards year 3 of this? I mean, how are things going for you with all that?
They're going okay. I feel very fortunate that our most recent tour in October and November, we were touring with supporting The World is a Beautiful Place and I'm No Longer Afraid to Die, and we were somehow right in between Delta and Omicron.
Right.
So we were extremely lucky. We got to play shows and no one got sick, except for like a couple minor colds. So, yeah, and now things are really uncertain again. There's, cancellations and it's like a lot of deja vu. But personally, I work from home most of the time. So I've just, been really lucky and had a lot of time to like write and write music and get some like life stuff out of the way. So it's going okay. Yeah.
Well, good deal. I had the good fortune of seeing that particular tour in Chicago. I will just shamelessly say that was one of the best triple bills I've ever had a chance to see between Gates and you guys and The World is a Beautiful Place, because I knew about you guys, but not the bookends, as it were.
Yeah, you were saying you really liked Gates, right? I think you.
They were.
Yeah,
amazing.
they're awesome. Yeah,
they were absolutely amazing, and it's one of those things where you've been to concerts in your lifetime, and you're waiting for a particular act, and the warm-up act comes on. It's kind of like, yeah, let's move this along. But Gates played, and they got. I'm like, where are they going? Where are you going? Come back!
Yeah,
this is.
You know what was funny was I think that was our first show with them. So we'd just been, and we were just running into the venue from Audio Tree. So we were like, hi, it's like kind of the stage where they've got a lot of people. So we were like, is that Dan? There's 2 Dans, right? There's like 2 Dans, and then there's like a who? Yeah, and obviously The World is amazing. They're great people, and their live set is really crushing. It's awesome. Yeah, awesome to see.
They
them
were.
play. Yeah.
I was another one of those things where you're just stunned by how good something is.
Yeah.
It's like you anticipate, okay, this will be pretty good. And wow, I've never heard, epic pop songs before, prog pop songs, basically. I was like, did these guys just write a 17-minute pop song? Did I just hear that? So,
yeah, well, they're super. It's interesting because Bentley, we've had a really interesting relationship with prog and like the prog label. And The World has just had a similar relationship with like the hardcore and emo scene. So,
Right.
They have been trying to extricate themselves from emo for so long. And so it was really cool to see them. And they were like, we wrote a prog album, like this is our prog
Right.
album. And it was just so cool to sort of see them embrace that and like really go for it and like bring their own ideas into it. And ironically, I don't know if it's ironic, but there were people who still thought it was an emo album, and they were like, no, this is a prog album, which I thought that discourse was really interesting to see it in a different genre, because I feel like we do that where we're, like, this is a pop album, and, people are, this is a prog album, and you're just like, ah! And that kind of, like, sort of, like, tension. But yeah, they're really sweet, and I'm really excited to do some more stuff with them. I almost said something that I'm supposed to not say yet.
Oops. No secrets. No, don't give away the secrets. I can't be blamed for that. I'm sorry.
It's not your fault.
I can't be held responsible. I was sitting all the way over here.
Yeah,
I had nothing.
I did not coerce.
I had nothing to do with that. So it's funny you talk about labels that way, because I am one of those people who's been trying to shed labels by reputation. When I went online with my group and whatnot, I was the prog guy.
Yeah.
And I've been I won't say desperately, but I've been kind of eager to kind of pull myself out of that realm. You know, it's okay because I love jazz, and and jazz is like prog only with acoustic instruments to most people. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll throw hip hop in there just for fun, just to keep shaking things up. So when I think of Frosting, the new Bent Knee record, it's kind of the same principle. All right, you thought we were here, but now we're going to go off in this direction.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've wanted to break the wheel or like break the mold for a long time. Every album we put out, I kind of say the same anecdote about how, I'm a really big Radiohead fan. So is Vince, my partner and Bethany's producer. And he's always sort of looked to Radiohead's track from going from the Bends to OK Computer, and that change, and the metamorphosis, and how that's always something that he's wanted, to make that kind of like, where did that come from, kind of, like a 180, not a 180, but just it's almost like you have an XY axis 90. And you're adding a Z axis or something.
It may not be a 180, but it's a hard 90.
Yeah. And so we were all really excited about the album because due to COVID, we had to write it in completely differently than before. And there's nothing like drastically changing your writing process to end up with a different sound.
Right.
And I think the album is really fantastic personally, and that's something nice about Bent Knee is that it's greater than the sum of the parts. It's six of us, but it's more, and so it's kind of, although I like all of my solo albums, it's hard to be like, oh, I have made a great thing, without sort of sounding like egotistical. But yeah, I'm really proud of Frosting. And I think it's really unique, and it's really, really challenging, and I think it's like a real, in Japanese we say it's like a mondaisaku, which means it's like a questionable, it sparks dialogue, and there's a part of me that feels a little like sad, sort of, with the response, because it hasn't been like a straight out positive response. There's been a lot of people who have been like, what the hell is going on with this piece, and there's also a lot of people, I've just like read a lot of I don't know if I've read a lot of comments. I don't really spend a ton of time on social media, but like I've read people who are like, oh my god, the live version is the best version, and I get both of that, but I think that even though it was written under like a strange circumstance, and in a sense it's like an album that was made under duress, I think it's a really wonderful piece of art that stands on its own. And a lot of times in music, I feel like it's easy to sort of try to want to make a dialogue about what is the best one, or what is the ultimate one, my desert island song, stuff like that. And I think that's kind of where a lot of like less constructive discussions happen. Like I think Frosting is great, and like Frosting Live is also great, but it's not like one's better or the other. Like I think it's a really complete piece of art. It's really challenging. And I'm really proud of it.
It's separate entities. I mean, we both love Radiohead and what have you, and I love the Bends like nobody's business. But if Radiohead kept producing the Bends over and over, I'd get bored.
Yeah.
If I heard you guys, I love Shiny Eyed Babies. That's where I fell in love. But if you guys were still doing that, I would be saying, grow. And an artist should be expected and allowed to grow and to develop over time. So I can understand where that sensation comes from. Out of curiosity, and this just popped in my head, has there ever been any consideration towards doing a live record?
Yeah, well, we always do those live sessions for all of our albums, and we've never put them out as like live albums. I don't know if there was a particular reason. I think it's probably because of like label contracts, especially with Land Animal, you know what they mean. That our contract just ended for CISO, so I don't know if that's something we might do for Frosting. Yeah, I know we eventually want to learn to play all the songs live. Like this, this is the first album that we finished before we ever played a single note in a rehearsal room.
Wow.
This whole album was written when none of us were in the room together. Like, there was, towards the very, very end, we had a couple sessions, or we had one session where we all were at the record company in Boston, and we were all listening to Vince's, like, one of the final mixes, and we were all in the room kind of, like, giving notes, and we added a couple things, but aside from that, that was about the only time all six of us were in the room together in the making of this. And so when we were going on this tour in the fall, we were like, all right, how are we going to learn these songs, which are so different? Like, are we going to have, like, 6 synths on stage? Are we going to have backing tracks? Like, all these questions. And so we picked 4 songs that we felt like, we picked some of the singles, basically, to learn. And so we're going to probably do something similar where every time we go out, we're going to try to, learn a couple more songs and eventually learn to play the whole album so we can do, like, a live video in the studio kind of thing again, is my assumption. But, yeah, we'll see.
I don't think people fully appreciate what a seismic shift that is in terms of methodology.
Yes.
I mean, that is huge. Walk me through the process this time as opposed to the way it's worked in records before.
Yeah. So records 1 through 4 were very demo-based, where somebody would bring in a demo and we would listen to it, and then we would just basically, like, pull it apart. And the demo sometimes was like, if it was me bringing it, it might have been just, like, a piano and vocal, or if it was, Ben bringing it in, it might have been, like, a really, like, layered track made in Reason or, Reaper, with all these parts and ideas, and sometimes verse and chorus, sometimes it was, like, really long, like, all these different variations of what a demo could be. And then we would sort of pull everything apart and put it back together, like, a lot of time spent in rehearsal rooms. And I think that kind of contributes to our sound a little bit because we have sort of a designated listener in the band where, Vince live, he does vocal effects and plays guitar and synths and sort of adds all of this, like, layer and texture. But when we were writing in the rehearsal room, a lot of times he's sort of listening. So, rehearsal rooms are not the best sounding places. So,
I would imagine.
We've sort of learned, we have a methodology with, like, carving out spaces for everybody so we can play the songs live. And then we'll play them out live and then adjust any areas that didn't feel like they flowed. And then we'll track that and then add layer after layer. Like, a lot of times we've been kind of like a maximalist approach where we just put everything down and then we give it to Vince, whose job is to sort of chisel away. It's like we give him this, like, giant piece of wood or marble, and he's sort of like, sort of seeing the song and making the arrangements. But What They Mean was the first album that we started in the room together. So we all went to a Big Nice Studio in Lincoln, Rhode Island, where we work with some of our really good friends, Bradford Krieger and James Parker, who are the engineers there. And they were sort of like the unspoken 7th and 8th, people who made that album happen. Because we were jamming and sort of, like, doing all of these ideas, like, almost like music games, and to come up with all of these ideas. And around the 3rd or 4th day, we were listening back to our improvs and being like, oh, I like that, and let's bookmark that. Oh, I like that. Let's bookmark that. And then eventually those things, people sort of, different people develop them into songs, or we would play them in rehearsal studios to sort of develop into songs. That was album 5, What They Mean. And so this album 6, in 2020, when was that? Oh my goodness. 2020. Yeah. So in 2020, we had...
Seems like so long ago.
I know, we had this idea where So Gavin used to do one-day albums in college where he would just be like, he would tell people in the caf or something like, oh, I'm going to do a one-day album on Friday. And then people could drop by his room and he'd just be making music, and he would just, it was just like purely an album made in one day, and he would put it on Bandcamp. Huh. And it was super cool. And all of us were interested in sort of writing restraints in different ways, but oftentimes in time. Like I've done a lot of RPM albums, which is short for Record Production Month, and it's a call to musicians to write either 10 songs or 35 minutes of music, whichever you get to first, within February, which is the shortest month of the year. So we've all done these like different challenges in terms of time, and so we were like, 2020, Bentley, let's do a 1 month album, like, because usually our productions take, you know, like 6 months, a year to just go from writing the songs to the mix at the end. So we were like, let's do a 1 month album. Let's see what happens if we just try to push ourselves. So we had booked Big Nice Studio for a month, and like, I forget, it was sometime between like May and July, and with COVID, we were like, all right, so we can't do this, but we have all this time set aside. So what if we just treat it like we're in the studio, and every day we'll, you know, all kind of log on around noon, and log on by which I mean, you know, we'll start working around noon, and like have a Zoom meeting around like 6 or 7 to talk about what we did. So every day, first couple of days, we're just like, all right, you know, let's just make some loops, or, you know, whatever we're excited about. And so we were just had this like folder where we were just throwing in all of these ideas. And around like the second week, we had to take a break because we found out Chris had Lyme disease.
Oh, goodness.
So we took a little time off. And then we came back, and we just did like 3 or 4 weeks of just everybody 5 days a week, you know, working from like noon to 6 individually. And, you know, we would be like, oh, you know, I really like that part that, you know, Jessica made, so I'm going to work on that today. And then we'll listen to it, and Chris will be like, oh, you know, that's actually cool, I want to write a bridge. And Chris will work on it the next day, stuff like that. So stuff got really like shifted around, and everyone was playing everything, you know, like, and everyone was singing, and everyone was writing like lyrics and writing all of these parts, and it was really, really fun and interesting. And then it just kind of was up to Vince to sort of find a flow and a cohesion of all of this, like, very diverse, and like, you know, the music is everywhere. And I think he was saying, you know, originally he thought it might have to be separate EPs because there's just so much variety in what's happening. But then he sort of went and like leaned into this idea of kind of playing to the contrast, you know, because a lot of times, like, we've always been like an album band. Like, we're like, you know, a lot of gapless transitions and all this stuff. But a lot of times we're playing to sort of like smooth transitions, right? Like, oh, this goes into this goes into this. And in this case, we were just trying, and Vince tried something different where it was just like, all right, what if the idea is that it's always jarring, you know, where it's like always going to something different. So yeah, very long answer.
It's a nice mindset. That's okay, because it was an informative answer. That's the important thing. It can't be easy, at least for me, my fragile little ego, to take the time and trouble to write something, to put your effort into something, and have it go, to take it to the rest of the band. And I've heard another musician in another band say this, you know, I poured my heart and soul into this over a weekend or what have you, and gave it to the rest of the band, only to have them look at me and say, what else you got? So, I mean, do you worry about that kind of thing, or is this is what you're doing going to be included somewhere almost regardless?
I'm glad you're talking about that, Cedric, because, I mean, that's why we stopped doing the demo thing, you know? Right. Like I was saying, album 1 through 4, we were doing demos, and it just got, like, too painful in the sense that, you know, there was just too much, like, personal attachment to different ideas. And so every decision, you know, like every sort of major change, it was like becoming really personal and unhealthy. That's why album 5 was so great, because it became impersonal, because, you know, we all built all of it from scratch. And
Right.
and yeah, this album, I think there is always kind of like a fear of what if my idea gets entirely canned. But I also think that the six of us have been working with each other for so long. You know, we've been working with each other for about 11 years, come February.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is next month. So I think we've sort of grown, kind of this trust in the process is, you know, the words that I usually hear Chris Baum use, but it's like, I think that we've learned to choose our battles, and also I think we've learned that, like, a lot of the decisions that we make collectively lend themselves to really good music and good songs that, you know, we wouldn't come up with ourselves. It's just different. But yeah.
I like it. I like it. Well, take a second and shamelessly promote yourself. What are you working on these days?
Oh, I'm working on a lot of stuff. I have a lot of albums that are sort of sitting around and waiting to get released. And so that's probably going to happen pretty soon. Well, that was very vague. I'm actually in my head about it.
Sometimes vague is good.
I mean, I'm just in my head about it because I have all this stuff that's done, and I just haven't, like, done the work to, you know, like, to set the release date and to, you know, like, finalize album art and work on music videos. It's like very, like, cut and clear, but I just haven't put in the time, or, you know, like, I just haven't, like, done the grinding, which I think is okay. Like, I'm not mad about it. I've just been, you know, like, lots of stuff personally and, you know, emotionally and you know, stuff in the world. Like, I try to be a proponent of, like, taking breaks, and, you know, it's not all about how much you get done. And, but
this is art. You have to feel it at some point. You know, it has to feel right to bring it out into the world.
Yeah. But so I'll have some stuff that I have a lot of music that I'm really excited about, that I'm excited to put out this year. And I've been spending a lot of time on my Patreon over the pandemic. Like, I kind of slowed down a little bit during tour. I'm kind of coming back into it. But, you know, one of the things that we're going to talk about is some of my favorite albums and stuff. And I just wanted to plug my Patreon on that note, because I do what I like to call book clubs, which are basically like record clubs, where I pick an album and we hang out on Sundays for like an hour, and we all sort of talk about the album, what we liked about it and what we didn't like about it, stuff like that. And I usually do about I try to do about like 2 albums a month whenever I can. But yeah, if anybody is particularly interested in, like, what I'm thinking about or what I'm listening to and, you know, what's influencing me on, like, a real-time basis, it's been a really fun thing to do, and there's a community that's kind of developed of the book club on my Patreon, as well as the Discord. And there's a ton of really great music that we all share with each other, and sort of really interesting insights. So yeah, it's kind of what I've been up to.
Yeah, you're the Oprah Winfrey of record clubs.
I wish. It was funny. Every year, the last 2 years, at the end of the year, I do like a book club bracket, where I do like a, you know, March Madness style, like, tournament of
nice.
all the albums that
That's a nice idea.
Yeah, all the albums that we did in book club over the year. And I was listening to all of the albums from 2021, and I was like, oh God, like, this was a weird year. Like, I really put everyone through, like, I was really testing everyone and their commitment, because some of the albums are so strange. Actually, yeah, once a month I have Vince pick an album as well. So there's, like, one album where Vince guests, like, once in a while, and he likes to pick, like, really, like, challenging albums. So,
okay.
But one of the funniest matchups in the bracket was one of the final matchup actually in the very bottom right was Phoebe Bridgers' Punisher versus the Muhal Richard Abrams Jazz Orchestra's Blue Blue Blue, which is, do you know this album?
I do not.
It's really out there. It's like a really wild, like free jazz album versus Phoebe Bridgers' like tender and wonderful album Punisher. Is such a funny combination. But yeah.
How does that even work? I don't know, but that's okay. Music is meant to be eclectic.
Yeah,
it keeps you off
keeps
balance.
you on your toes. You know,
It's
it's entirely whatever you want. You know, like you don't have to reason why. You can just pick whatever you want. So it's fun.
I'm just kind of wondering, how do you even pick the brackets to begin with? You just pull titles out of a hat?
Yeah,
and
I do
match them up?
completely random because usually it's not. You know, there's a couple of the couple albums every year get like a bye the first round, and.
Right.
Last year, in 2020, I picked, like, the higher seeded albums. But this year, I was like, I was going to do a random order generator. And just
Okay.
put them in as they came. But.
And we'll just see what happens. Well, as you alluded to earlier, Courtney has been kind enough to agree to participate in my new feature, which I call My Favorites Favorites, in which my favorite artists talk about their favorite artists on similar instruments. But in your case, it's singer-songwriters. So tell me about a few of your favorite singer-songwriters.
Yes, I'm very excited to talk about this. So I figured I would share a couple albums or artists that I'm really excited about right now, and then sort of go back in time and share some artists that I've been excited about, sort of my like fundamentals in a way.
Gotcha.
So one artist that I'm really excited about right now, and going back to my Patreon thing, this was my most recent book club that I did, is an artist named Lorraine. And her most recent album, Fatigue, is really cool. So, you know, this might be, singer-songwriter might be a misnomer, but this is an album that's like a collage of sounds, and just beautiful chords, and it's stuff that I'm really excited about right now, is sort of sample manipulation and different layering and found sounds, and, you know, like there's one song where she has kind of like a loop of almost like a tape sound, and then that sort of starts looping and you start hearing a beat to that, and then she kind of gives it this backbeat, you know, and the last song on the album is like a reimagination of a song from her earlier albums where she self-samples and, you know, stretches out. And it's hard to say what I love so much about it, because it's just like, you know, I listened to this album and my problem sometimes with listening to albums is that the albums that inspire me the most, I just start writing while I'm listening to it, because I just feel all these things. So I just have an interesting relationship where I don't feel like I'm fully focused, but I feel completely absorbed by the album. And this was one of those albums where I was just like, oh my God, like this is the album that I want to write, you know, these sounds and like these layers. And one thing that I really like about it is that she has lines where it sounds like she's almost singing a foreign language, but it's actually English. The way she phrases it and in sort of the words that she chooses, which I think is fascinating. I'm really interested in words and like mishearing words and garbled words, like with Benny's Egg Replacer from You Know What They Mean. There's like a couple different set of lyrics that we printed, actually. I hope I'm not giving anything away here, but the CD and the vinyl have two different sets of lyrics, neither of which are correct. And yeah, I just thought it would be really interesting to be put in a place where you have to decide for yourself what the lyrics are. And even when we were working on the most recent album, Frosting, when we were doing demos, we set it off. Chris sang the vocal melody originally, but he sort of mumbled it in a way where it was like indiscernible what he was saying. And when it came time to work on it, I asked Chris, like, oh, can you write out the lyrics? Because whatever you're singing sounds really cool, but I don't know what you're singing. And he was like, I don't have lyrics. It was just like, kind of like a fever daydream, like just completely made up. And I was like, oh, well, that's cool. So, I just sort of listened to what he was singing over and over again to try to like siphon out words and like just kind of create my own version of, what Chris was singing, I think. And yeah, in that sense, going back to Lorraine, there's just like a lot of interesting, almost like hypnotic lines that sort of she repeats that, I'm like, I don't even know what she's saying. And then I looked up the lyrics and I was like, whoa, that's cool, So that's one artist I'm really excited about. One other artist that I've recently been really smitten with is James Blake, who I've always really admired. But his most recent album, which is called Friends Who Break Your Heart, or it's Friends That Will Break Your Heart. It's one or the other. Again, fantastic. And I think this is another album where, both Lorraine and James Blake, are they singer-songwriters? Yes, they are singer-songwriters, but, it's not like what you would expect to hear from Joni Mitchell or, Bob Dylan. It's like a lot of sample-based and sort of sound design-oriented stuff. And I just loved this album so much. I listened to it a ton on tour. I think the lyrical content and the whole theme of the album of like growing apart from friends or, like conflict that is not like a romance thing. It's just like an interpersonal conflict with, acquaintances or people, like just drifting apart, which I thought was super interesting. So another album where I was listening and I was like, oh my God, this is the album that I want to make, just the sounds and the way the rhythms and the samples all play into each other, I think are fantastic. Last year, I started building a Eurorack system, which is like a modular synth setup. And listening to this album, I was like, I could hear how he's using Eurorack too, which made me so happy. And, I think there's this thing in music and creativity that's related to copyright where we have a fear of repeating ourselves or other people, or it's almost like an illusion or a magic trick, where if it's like, it's bad if you can tell how somebody is doing that, it's like, and I get that there's like a degree of mystique about an amazing album. Earlier you were talking about like Supper's Ready and like the mystique of like this like section that you can't count, and then you learn to count it. It's just like a different relationship where it's not good or bad because you know how it works or it doesn't work. But that's something that I've been questioning a lot in my own creativity and my own creative reasoning, where I'm like, I'm trying to stop shying away from things because I know it's been done before. Because realistically, like, everything has been done before. And so listening to James Blake album and hearing some of these like really wonderful moments where he's using Eurorack, and I'm like, oh my God, I know that sound and I absolutely love it. It's just like, that was such a wonderful moment for me where I was like, I know exactly what he's doing. I'm pretty sure I have the same module and I could make that same sound. And is it any less wonderful? No, it's fantastic. It's just really exciting for some reason. That was one of like my big takeaways listening to his most recent album. But anyway, so Lorraine and James Blake are two albums that really inspired me recently. For two artists. Going a little bit back into my own musical history, I think two albums that, or two artists that have really inspired me are both Japanese artists that I grew up listening to. One is, and I'll preface this by saying it's really neat to get to talk about these artists now in 2021, because I've tried to bring up these artists in the past in interviews, but I sort of felt personally shy about it because there was no way to really hear these people's works or, albums. And,
right.
It was just like, it's hard to be like, oh yeah, this obscure artist that there's no good way for you to listen to, let me spell their name for you, and it just seemed really kind of like, what does it even mean? Because like a lot of times when you're talking about favorites and influences, it's like, oh, let me go and listen to that. Like that's sort of like, the next step. But now with streaming and YouTube and all this stuff, both of these artists' music are available, and so it's just been so cool to get to talk about these artists, and also these artists were both really huge, like massive Japanese sort of alternative indie songwriters when I was growing up, and now there's a new generation of artists my age who are also touting these artists as their references, which and deep interests, which is really cool. So my first artist is Shina Ringo, and there's a Japanese math rock band called Toriko or Tricot, who is gaining popularity sort of globally. They're really awesome, and their singer is really influenced by Shina Ringo. And then my other artist is Utada Hikaru, who's now based in London, and they're super cool. And Rina Sawayama, which is another British sort of hyper-pop, like really cool singer-songwriter, pop artist, who's a contemporary. I mean, Utada is also contemporary. They're actually about to release an album, like, really soon. But Rina Sawayama, who's been on, like, The Tonight Show, and is, like, becoming like really popular, working with really cool up and coming producers and stuff. Rina's one of her big influences is Utada Hikaru. So it's really cool to have like not only a way for people to actually go and listen to both Shina Ringo and Utada Hikaru's music, but that there's other artists who are now like referencing, the massive effect that these two artists had growing up. But, Shina Ringo's album, Kalkzamen Karina Hana, is a masterpiece. It's her third solo album. And again, it's funny. I guess I haven't really changed because it is a heavily sample-based album. Like, it's a singer-songwriter album, it's like she's writing songs, and, but there's all these different samples of, like, on that album in particular, there's this one beautiful track where it starts with the sound of a train going by, and the warning sign of the train goes like dong 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 dong, and that kind of gets incorporated into the song. There's another song where somehow they sampled like they created a version of the song that sounds like a news update or sort of like a 8-bit like a chiptune. And they're playing it in the background while someone's vacuuming. So you just hear this, like, song playing in the background while there's somebody vacuuming around the house. And then it cuts to the full song. It's just absolutely brilliant. Utada Hikaru is another huge Japanese artist. Their album called First Love still to this day holds the record for the most sold Japanese album, I think, in Japan.
Wow. That's saying something.
Yeah, it's really huge. Japan is actually the second biggest music market after the U.S. So it's a lot of albums. And I think that album came out in the late 90s, but they're still making music, and I don't really have a relationship with their albums in the sense that, like, I had one album that I listened to, but every song and every album that Utada, or some call them Hiki, or Hikaru is their like given name, which means light, but that they put out was just omnipresent in Japan. It was in commercials, it was playing from TVs, like I would sing the songs at karaoke, and their music had like a huge impact on me growing up. And I forgot about it for a while, especially because I moved to the U.S. and I just didn't have any access to their music. And around 2017, I remembered how much I loved their music, and I started listening to it again, and it's really powerful, and I can hear how much it has influenced me and my own music making. I was just, they're putting out a new album called Bad Mode. I think in the next couple months, and I was just reading an article that they did with Billboard, and it was just super cool to see an artist that is Japanese that, you know, is working on a global level now, and, you know, it's kind of unusual. They were one of the first artists that sort of created like a Billboard Top 40 album in America as a Japanese artist, even before like social media and the internet and stuff. And yeah, it sort of renewed this excitement for me, where I was like, I really want to meet them, and I really want to like work with them. You know, there's like a lot of people, I feel like at this point, I don't feel like I'm that many like degrees of separation away from them, because there's like so many cool artists that are connected to what they're doing, you know, like they're producers and like, you know, stuff like that. So anyway, again, long answer. Those are my two most recent artists and my two sort of like OG favorite artists.
Excellent. And they're unique answers. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
All right. I will let you off the hook by if you have anything going on in the future that you're able to discuss. Again, I'm not coercing you. I'm sitting way over here. So anything that you can talk about that's going on in the near future, solo stuff, what have you?
The band's talking about actually releasing the entire folder of loops and samples and all of the sounds that we made when we did Frosting. So we don't really have details on that yet, but we're sort of trying to figure out how we want to release it. Like, we want to find a way to sort of give it out to our Patreons first, and then sort of have it as like a standalone thing that you could purchase and use to make your own music, or just comb through the files, whatever. So the details are in the works. But I think that's going to be really cool for anyone who's interested in our writing process, or, you know, like, how did we make this weird album? So I think that's something to note. The sample pack / sort of, just like the every folder is, you know, basically says like day 1, day 2, day 3. And it has all of the stuff that we were working on that day. So, you know, it's kind of where we put all the assets so we could listen to them and give each other feedback. And a solo album coming, many solo albums. I just need to sit down. I'm actually, like I was saying before we logged on, I'm in the process of moving, and I'm trying to get some like life stuff taken care of. And so, like, I think by March I'll be in a place where I can really focus on actually like getting my back to, you know, spending more time creating and like finishing some of this stuff and putting it out. So I'm hoping I will have at least 2 or 3 albums that I'll release this year. There's one album confirmed that is coming out in the fall with a collaboration I'm doing with Brad from Big Nice Studio, aforementioned. Him and I have been writing music together that we're super stoked on. And then, I have probably at least 2 or 3 albums that I'll put out this year as well.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I certainly appreciate the time.
Yeah.
And I will try to show off a little bit here. Domo arigato gozaimashita.
Very good. Yeah.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Really excellent pronunciation.
Thank you. I appreciate the effort, and I look forward to seeing you out there soon.
Yeah. Likewise.
Take care.